when you see a trader positioned, you feel like, oh my God, that must be like doing some like hedging job, or like you guys must be like sitting with a lot of screen. Like we do have a lot of screen, but like we are still engineers mainly, even though we are trading. So it's still important to understand the mechanism behind the energy. There's one really fun example. I think it was last year, the price goes negative in the systems. That's because the next day the solar production was too much. So when price goes negative, that means when you are using electricity, they are actually paying you. So it's like you're not paying for using electricity, you are actually getting paid by turning on your heater, stuff like that. Yeah, so I really enjoy it. Like I think energy market is super fun.
Welcome back to the Fresh Engineer podcast, where fresh engineers share their stories. I'm your host and mechanical engineer Anna Reich, and in today's episode I'm talking to Yu-Hsuan Li, who is an energy engineer and nuclear engineer from Taiwan, working as a renewable energy portfolio manager at the company Fortum in Stockholm, Sweden. We actually met at an international hackathon called the Energy Efficiency Hackathon, where we ended up on the same team and of course won. And then we realized that we're both based in Stockholm, and that's how we became friends. In our conversation, we talk about what energy engineering and nuclear engineering is, and why she decided to go into that field, what it was like for her to move from Taiwan to Europe, what the work of an energy trader looks like, and how to tell when it's time to switch to a new job. So I hope you enjoy our conversation as much as I did. I wanted to go all the way to the beginning of you and ask you, where are you from? Where did you grow up? What were you like as a kid?
Okay, so I'm from Taiwan, and when I was a kid, I think I'm on the more shy profiled, but I'm always curious about like things happening around, and I'm also a bit competitive towards sports or like schools as well. Yeah.
And then in high school, what were your favorite subjects there?
It's kind of interesting. My high school, I studied for girls' high school. So there's only girls in my class, and I really enjoy it somehow. It's also nice to only have single gender there. But of course, we have some teachers there, male. But I think my favorite subject is physics. I really enjoy solving the questions there and understand what is actually behind the equations, behind each theory, and that's actually happening like in your daily life. Yeah, that's my favorite subject.
Since you like physics, is that also what got you interested in engineering?
I think so, kind of. And because I think in physics, there's one small chapter they talk about like in more like atomic level physics. So there's also talking about nuclear reactions, stuff like that. And that sort of linked to my study afterwards. Because I choose kind of into nuclear science or nuclear materials when I was doing my bachelor.
So then when you graduated from high school, was there anything else that you considered, or how did you decide what to go into?
Yes, it's a bit different from here in Europe. I think back in Asia or in East Asia, it's mainly about your grade. So before the university, you do a really big like national exam. You have two chances. And then the first one is you do the exam and then you do an interview. And you have like maybe at that time, it's like 5 options, and you have a priority list. And to be honest, in like Taiwanese culture, you need to probably get into a good school first. And then it's like you have more chance to get a good job based on where you graduated. Your subject doesn't matter so much. So people are aiming to get into the best school first, and maybe they will switch the subject afterwards. So by then, there was also a lot of dilemma in my mind, like, should I choose the subject that I like, or should I choose the school that rank the best? But maybe I cannot get into the best, like the subject that I like in the school. And afterwards, after some discussion, back then I think about study for physics, material science. I think because I also studied for medical subjects back then. So I think I also tried to be in the medical school in one of the university in Taiwan. Yeah, then that's my priority list. And then I think I got into 2, and one of them is the one that I study for material science and the energy engineer. Yeah.
Okay. So what was your experience like studying it? Were you happy with your choice? And was it how you expected it to be, or was it different?
It was, I think I really liked my subject at that time, like the major that I have, because it's a new program. It's an interdiscipline program. So it's somewhere similar to you have two minors while you're studying. So first you can choose between environmental engineering or energy engineering. So I choose energy. And then the second one, you can choose freely, any kind of subject you like in the school or any department. So you can even choose art, accounting, finance, history, stuff like that. And back then I chose material science. One of more shallow side of the decision making is because my school, the material science ranks the best in Taiwan. So they're really good at it. And also Taiwan's focus on semiconductors. So material science is also really important back then. So if I choose that, I have much more resources from the teacher side and also much more connection towards industry. So that's one of the reasons I choose it.
And just jumping a little bit back, is there any advice you would have for high school students who might want to go into engineering, but they're not sure if it's for them? How can they decide?
I think it's really difficult to understand what you want when you just graduate from high school, especially you haven't stepped into the university environment yet. I think it's just maybe don't be afraid to quit if there's some subject that you don't like. Like maybe you have a really beautiful image in the beginning, like, oh my God, I'm going to be a super like technical guy, or I'm gonna be super good at programming. And then once you actually touch it and you feel like, oh, it's not what you imagined, then it's also fine to quit it. And usually in the university, you have some chances to participate in other courses from different departments. And I also did that when I was studying. Like I just choose a course and to see if I actually interested in it or not. And if I don't, I think in Taiwan, we have like 3 weeks and you can try it out. And if you don't like it, just quit the subject and you can just change it. And I think it's the best way to try or to understand if you like it or not. And also maybe talk to your professor, talk to your seniors, talk to the alumni. Usually they are super welcoming and really willing to share their experience. And also get as much as opportunity if you can. Like if they're like a company visiting, just go for it. If companies coming to your university having a job fair or something like that, just also go there and ask as much as you want. And yeah, I think that's my like suggestion. Like don't be afraid to stop something and change. Yeah.
And yeah, could you explain a little bit more about what material science and energy engineering is?
It's actually really difficult to explain it because these two subjects, they are both super broad. Like material sciences cover so many things in the material. It could be linked to physics. It could be linked to chemical engineering, mechanical engineering as well. Like so when you're testing the performance of the materials. And also so for energy engineering because it's related to all sorts kind of energy. So I would say my study is not super specific in a way. For the first 2 years, we study something more in a general level. And for the third and fourth year, you can choose which trait you want to focus on. For instance, I focus on corrosion for materials. That also links to why I study nuclear materials afterwards. Yeah, so it's really difficult but it's more like saying how materials perform, understand how phase changes in materials. And for energy, it's also more like understand each kind of energy sources, how they generate it in a more fundamental level. And then you can choose the track you want to focus on, either on wind energy, solar energy, nuclear energy, stuff like that.
And what did you find the most difficult about your studies?
It's like, I think link back to the question before, it's really broad. So you feel like you are not learning everything into a really deep, but it's also, so you feel like, oh, I didn't understand everything thoroughly. So you might feel like less confidence compared to the others who study for computer science and they just focus on one thing and they're really good at it. But on the other hand, we are more like thinking horizontally. So if you think about assistance, that's easier for us But if you only think about one technology, that's a bit difficult for us. So it's kind of like double side. It just depends on how you think about it. It's like, of course, you're going to think about you're less than people in the beginning. But I think it could be a strength as well.
And what advice would you give someone to get through engineering school, specifically for, energy and material engineering?
I think the difficult part is you need to admit that an engineer is to do something that is practical and to solve problems. So to understand what kind of tools you can use is important. And you need to embrace the fact that you probably won't come up with a new theory, or you probably won't come up with something out of nowhere. But the strength you are going to have is you're going to understand a lot of knowledge based on someone else already built. And on top of that, you're going to solve a problem.
After your bachelor, you decided to directly do your master studies, right?
Yes.
So how did you decide to do your master, and then also what kind of master to do?
So I choose nuclear materials for my master degree. One of the reasons is that we need to do a bachelor thesis at the 4th grade, and I choose to focus on corrosion materials in nuclear engineering use. So then there's a professor that I joined his lab, and I really enjoying the lab, and I really also like the topics a lot. So then I decided, so I'm gonna just continue doing my thesis master thesis with him. Also, I think it's a really smooth transition, or just step up for me, because if you stay in the same lab, you have much more opportunity than people coming outside from other departments. So between my bachelor and master, I go for some summer schools because I already know the topics really well, and I also know the lab really well. So that's one of the reasons that I choose to do it.
Could you also go a little bit into what nuclear engineering is?
Yes, it's also really big, because if you think about from the more practical side, if you think about nuclear power plants, it's combined so many things together. First of all, in the reactor, you have nuclear reactions. That's more on the physics side. And then after the reaction, you generate the heat that goes to the turbine, that comes to the thermodynamics or mechanical engineering side. And then if you talk about the safety of the power plants, that's another subject. And if you talk about the materials, because in nuclear power plants or in nuclear reactions, it's always high pressure and high temperature. So the characteristic of the material will change a lot, also based on the radiation. So the atoms inside the material also change differently based on the room temperature situations. It's also cover a lot of different things in nuclear science or nuclear engineering. And what I choose to focus on is the nuclear materials, the corrosion behavior for the materials when they are in really high temperature. Back then, I did my bachelor thesis for supercritical water reactors. So if the water goes to the supercritical stage, how the material is going to react to it. That's one of the topics. And then for my master's thesis, I did the corrosion study for the spent fields of nuclear. So the waste from the nuclear power plants, and you put it in a can, in a metal can. And then in Taiwan, we put this metal can, or we call it dry storage, and we put it nearby the coast. And then, so I study the materials, how it's gonna be degraded based on the environment there, and then how the material is gonna perform. And this is the topic that I focus on. So in summary, it's really broad topic as well in nuclear engineering, even though it sounds like, it's only one type of energy resources, but it's also really broad.
And then you started working as a research assistant at the university, right?
Yes, after my master's study. There's some reason for that. First is after I finished my master's study, it's a bit limited what you can do if you only focus on nuclear science or nuclear engineering in Taiwan. First thing is we are phasing out nuclear power. So that's less and less power plants that is gonna be operative. So either you go to energy company, power company, for working in the power plant, or you stay in the academic. So one of the reasons I decided to go to become a research assistant in the school first is because I want to know how academic work if I stay there, and if I want to study a doctor degree or not, because that's also a lot of people's choices to go for after that. And another reason is I want to study abroad. So it's also nice to be there in a more stable environment, not so much intense work that you need to handle. So then I have spare time to prepare for my application to study abroad. Yeah.
Okay. And so then you went to Sweden. So that's your study abroad.
Maybe I can link to another previous experience. So one really good thing that I like in my master degree is I also have a lot of opportunity to do some visiting in other places and join conference. So I did one internship in Switzerland and for like 3-4 months in a research institute as well, and also focusing on nuclear materials science. And back then I just fall in love with working there, and Switzerland is just so beautiful, and I like the work-life balance there. It's so different from Taiwan that you need to work extra hours if you work for the like semiconductor industry or something like that. So then I decided like I want to work in Europe, so it's better to have a degree in Europe first. And another reason is like I think I was too focused on nuclear engineering and nuclear energy. And I'm also interested in some other renewable energy, not only nuclear energy. So then I want to study the whole system instead. So that links to my next master degree. So I study sustainable energy systems in Barcelona and in Sweden. Yeah.
Okay. So then what went into preparing for that move? Now, how did you decide where to go, which program to choose, and how did you get in?
Yeah.
And how did, what went, what else?
Oh,
Because it was probably a lot.
It was a lot. Oh my gosh. Like, first of all, as a non-English native spoken people, you need to prepare for the English test. Like, that's TOEFL. And it's to be honest, like nobody likes it. It's like kind of a annoying process. Like you just need to follow templates and you need to kind of prepare it for it. So yeah, then I prepare for the TOEFL test. And for my program, which I really like, is you need to study in 2 different countries, in 2 different schools. And you have a lot of opportunity to meet the industry. So I study for the energy program. Also, one of the focus for my program is there's 1 business schools involved. So we also have around 2 months business school study in Barcelona. And I think in that way, we are more linked to business oriented and you understand the market a little bit more. So that's why I choose this program. And for applying this program, you need to do a video. To introduce yourself, to kind of pitch yourself for 3 minutes or something like that. So I was writing scripts and asked my friends who was really good at filming and do some like magic for me. And we try really our best to do that. But one really tricky thing is like you need to have your TOEFL grades on time. So the first time I applied for it, I applied twice. The first time I applied for it, I missed the deadline. So my TOEFL grade did not arrive on time. So I missed the deadline. So I cannot apply for it. So I need to wait for the second round. So that's the things. Like if you really want to study abroad, maybe it's good to start preparing for your English exam as soon as possible. And then after that, I think you also need to like reference letters from either your professor or someone know you really well. And that's also important. I think that's basically the process for application. But I applied for more than 1 school at the same time. Yeah.
I'd love to hear what it was like for you to study in Spain and Sweden, coming from Taiwan, and both the university system, but also maybe the life around it.
Between these 3 locations, I think Barcelona and Sweden, they are a bit similar, but they are really different from Taiwan. In Taiwan, I think it's much more credits you need to fulfill. And in there, I'm more comfortable. I have my own group. I have my own friend zones. I understand the culture a lot. So everything seems easier. But then in first year, I was in Barcelona. That's my first time to study abroad. So using different language to study as well, and meeting friends, like because our program is international. So I'm also meeting a lot of classmates from different cultures. So in the beginning, you have a lot of things to learn beside of your schools. But in Barcelona, even though it's a super international city, students there tend to have their own local community already. So it's a little bit difficult for international students to join their events. And they also don't have like a local student that hosts events for international students. So for instance, like if they have some companies come to the school and try to show their like career opportunity or stuff like that, they are usually in Catalan or Spanish. So it's like we kind of missing out the opportunity there. But in Sweden, it's different level of like international wise. And what I really like in Sweden is they have like a student community who host international events for international people. In that way, I think we feel more included in a school. That's the student life. But in Spain, the study there, I think it's more like a project oriented. Like you don't have that much exams. It's more like you work on the project and you like present the project in the end, and teacher are just graded based on the project. And I really love the professor there. They are super friendly and not easy to approach. They are like your friends. They like usually between the class break, they stay and then they talk to you extra about your life, stuff like that. So it's like kind of like South European mindset, like super friendly. So I really like that. But in Sweden, the study, it's also not super like theoretical. I will say it's even less theoretical compared to in Barcelona. But I think the professors here are also super nice. Yeah, compared to the professors in Taiwan, they are you can see the hierarchy between students and professor. In Asia, like I think it's really clear, like they are a little bit untouchable. But then here it's like much more friendly, and they have their opening hours all the time. You can just shoot them emails and visit them, asking questions. I remember I have a professor from KTH, like he even offering you like, oh, if you want special lectures, like I can do that for you as well, stuff like that.
How was it like for you to look for your first job after the second master's degree?
Yes, I think it's really important for students, if you want a job right after your master degree, it's really important for you to have at least an internship. Or at least you do thesis with some company if you want to jump into industry, for sure. If you want to stay in academic, maybe not necessary, but if you want to jump into industries, you should probably find an internship first or do your thesis with any company that you like, because it's really important to have connection here, at least in Sweden that I know. They will appreciate to hire someone that they already know. Yeah.
Is that what you did as well?
Yes, that's what I did, because I did my thesis with my current company now. And then there's another opportunity open up when I about to finish my thesis. So then I just applied for that and got it.
So you had a job right out of university, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And what was that job? Yeah. How did you like it?
Yes. So it was actually interesting story, because I was doing my thesis in my current company and I have two supervisors from two different departments. And when I was about to finish my thesis, one of my supervisors told me like, oh, so I'm going to quit really soon. I said, what? And then, are you going to keep continuing supervising my thesis? And she was super nice. She said, yeah, I talked to my next boss and he said, that's fine. I'm going to just keep helping you out, but I'm gonna leave the position really soon. And then so her position was opened, then I applied for her position. And I was lucky to get it, because like the team already knew me. So yeah.
And what was that role?
It's a spot trader. So it sounds a bit weird, I think, because it's my company is an energy utility company, but then we also do electricity trading. So we do spot trading. That means day ahead trading. So 1 day ahead, we do the trades. So that's how we call it. It's called spot trader, but we are trading for consumption. Yeah.
What does that mean?
It means, okay. Yeah, that's always the question. The people are always like, what? You're a trader? Like, can you trade electricity? But so something really interesting to know, back in Taiwan, we cannot trade electricity because we only have one company. It's called Taipower Company. They basically control everything. They are doing transmission, distributions, also set out the price for you. But in Europe, it's different. And in Nordic, we are talking about Finland, Norway, Sweden, Denmark altogether. It's a free market, so you can trade electricity. So if you're a producer, you produce energy and you put it in the market, and you're a consumer, then you demand how much you want to buy. And what I'm doing is I'm doing the trades 1 day ahead. So I need to forecast how much is our customer needs to consume for the next days. So customer in terms of industry customer or household like you or anyone can sign up a contract with us. And then we forecast or predict your consumption for the next day. And there's gonna be a lot of other company. They also forecast their productions. And then you have demand and supply curve, and then you have the price set. And my company, they are producer and also provider as well. Both way. Yeah.
And that's your current role?
I'm still in the same team, but now I have different role as a portfolio manager. So it's more like I need to take care more projects and I need to be closer to our clients. So in my daily job, I either have 2 tasks. One of them is I do the trades. So I do the trading, like the operative trading, 1 day before the event actually happened. Or other tasks, like I follow up projects, I'm managing projects, I talk to clients. They could be like a wind farm or some industry clients. They need to buy energy and they want to maybe fix a contract, which is maybe beneficial for them, but also beneficial for us because we know that we can sell stuff like that. So it's a bit different, but I'm still doing the trading job.
Okay. And could you explain a little bit what your typical work day looks like, and what are you wearing, where are you working, and what do you do?
Okay. Yeah, actually living really close by to my office, which is really nice. I can bike there in 15 minutes or so. And my company located in Solna, it's more like a office area, a little bit outside of the Stockholm. And we don't have any dress code in the office, but people tend to wear more, maybe a little bit
semi-formal.
Yeah, formal dressing. So as I said, I have 2 different tasks before, every day. So if I'm doing the trades, the operative work, it's really timing crucial. You need to finish everything before lunchtime for next day. So you need to start early, like at 8, and then do all the process and make sure you have everything correct before lunchtime. Because if you have one number like miss or something, it's gonna cost a lot for the trading. It's gonna, we are talking about millions euros, stuff like that. So it's a bit stressful job. To be honest, for the first 3 months, I had nightmares all the time because I don't want to mess up anything. But yeah, that's when you are doing operative work. And then after lunchtime, you have the results from the trade and you solve the result, do some reports, stuff like that. And if I'm not operative, I can work from home. But I really love to go to the office because I love to talk to my colleagues in person, and you got feedback more directly. And also hang out with the colleague. I think that's really important. So if I'm doing that, I just need to be in the office around 8:30-ish. And then I can decide if I want to sit with my team or not, or I can just sit by myself because we have floating seats in the office. And yeah, and I usually finish around 5.
And do you have any need for Swedish or can everything be in English that you work?
No, you don't really need Swedish, but you need to keep in mind like most of them are Swedish. So when we have lunch break or when we have fika break, it's always they are talking in Swedish. That's the most comfortable language for them. Yeah.
What is your favorite part and least favorite part of your job?
Tricky. I really like my colleague. They are super nice, friendly, driven. Like I have never experienced in my current company that people are not like hiding something, like they don't want to share information with you. That never happens, and we always help out each other. And they are really humble as well. Like if they don't know something, they just admit it, and they will ask like, so can you teach me? And if I need something, I know where to go as well. That's the best part of it. And there's also a lot of opportunity in my company because it's relatively big company. So they have a lot of different units, and they sort of also encouraging you to do the rotation. So for instance, if I actually feel stuck a little bit in the beginning of my first role. After maybe a year or 1.5 years, I feel like, oh, there's not so much that I can improve, or I don't feel challenging enough at my current role. So then they have a new opportunity pop up, and I apply and I try. And then they also encourage you to try. So I think that's really good. But the least favorite part is also it's a big company, so there's a lot of I won't say it's bureaucracy, but it's a lot of things you need to go through in a big company. Sometimes communication could be really slow, and also it's an energy company, so it's also linked to a lot of clients. So the communications between you and the clients are also really important, and sometimes they could be slow, and then the project could be blocked because of them. So sometimes it's really difficult to push something through compared to small or like startup or more unconventional companies. Yep.
What is one misconception about your job or your industry, so the energy industry, that people typically get wrong?
I think the first thing is like when you see a trader positioned, you feel like, oh my God, that must be like doing some hedging job, or like you guys must be like sitting with a lot of screen. Like we do have a lot of screen, but like not like tracking the stock market and like trying to catch the height. But we are still engineers mainly in our department, even though we are trading. So it's still important to understand the mechanism behind the energy. So for instance, we are we produce mainly hydropowers. So you need to understand how turbine works, for instance. And you need to know how wind farm works as well, because you need to do the forecasting. So it's not like we are trading on the stock, stuff like that. But it's still an energy engineering job, I would say. Yeah.
So you also forecast what kind of energies are going to be produced based on the wind, or?
Yeah, you also need to get some resource from like weather informations from other resources to know how much wind's gonna blow tomorrow and predict the production of it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's really fun because it also changes every day, and the markets also change every day. I think that's one really fun example that I can think about now. It's, I think, was last year the price goes negative in the systems. That's because the next day the solar production was too much. So when price goes negative, that means when you are using electricity, they are actually paying you. So it's like you're not paying for using electricity, you are actually getting paid by turning on your heater, stuff like that. Yeah, so I really enjoy it. It's like, I think energy market is super fun.
Is there any source of energy that people don't know about usually, or that maybe you were surprised by?
Not in my company. We are mainly using like the main sources, like hydro, nuclear, solar, wind. Maybe there's another service in the power grid. It's called ancillary service. So it's kind of the service to balancing out the electricity grid. So it's like a buffer for the electricity grid to maintain the same frequency for the grid to operate in. So, for instance, battery can do that, and now it's something called demand response can do that as well. So that could be from your electric car as well. So if you connect your electric car to a charger, and then they can also kind of using your battery from your electric car to balance the grid.
So to put energy in there when they have more, and then to take it out if they have less.
Yes.
What advice would you give someone looking for their first job in your industry?
I think if we are talking about energy industry, it's super broad. Like you can do any kind of engineering stuff in the energy, and maybe not even engineering related. But I think just probably be open-minded to take any kind of opportunity you can have and understand it a little bit more, and don't be afraid for changes, because energy is so many different resources, and it's also really easy to switch from one to another. Like you can maybe work for a wind power company now, but maybe next day you can work for a hydropower company. That's also energy industry. So even though they sound super different, but there must be something similar to each other. So be open-minded to take any kind of opportunity that you have.
So get your foot in the door where it's easy, and then you can switch to.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. And what are some other industries where you could work as an energy engineer?
I think you can also work as a consultant easily, giving advices to companies that they need maybe sustainable solutions for their building, for their factory, stuff like that. I think that's probably, because energy industry is also quite broad. So there's so many things you can do. Yeah.
For the fresh engineers watching this or listening to this, when do you think it's time to switch jobs, whether that's switching roles at within a company or even going to a different company? What are some of the signs that you could look for?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. You will actually know when is the time to switch when you feel stuck, like that in terms, like if you feel like, oh, my role is not challenging enough for me anymore. I feel like there's not so much that I can learn from it. That's one sign. And the other side is like if you don't like the environment of the working space. I think that's super important. It's not like if you don't like one colleague and you quit. It's not like that, but it's more like you can feel the vibe. If the environment is encouraging you to grow or not. If you have some conflicts, how your manager or your colleagues solve the conflict. Are they supportive? Are they encouraging you to grow? Are they encouraging you to switch jobs, stuff like that? Are they providing you the resource that you need for become better? I think that's also important. If they don't, then probably also time to change.
I'm always interested to hear how engineers are in their personal life. You're still an engineer, Are there any ways in which being an engineer has impacted your personal life, like anything besides your studies and your work? Is there anything you think about differently or do differently?
Actually, that's a really interesting example that I have. It's a bit sad, like a friend of mine, she recently broke up with her boyfriend. And then she was thinking about, should I take him back? Something like that, like different. She was thinking a lot and like also a little bit like doubtful about herself. And then I told her like, maybe you should have a checklist. You should list down something which are important for you. And maybe if he checked like 80% of them, then you can take him back. And she was saying, you are so engineer. Like, how can you have a checklist for this? But I think that's reasonable. Like, it's easier to decide things, like for me at least. Yeah.
Yeah, checklists are a big thing in engineering.
Yeah, right. I think, and maybe a protocol or something like that. It's always nice to follow some instructions, make life easier. Like you don't need to think too much.
It's funny. It's like, what are your career goals going forward? Where do you see yourself in, let's say, 5 years?
It's always a bit tricky, but I think because now my role is involved a little bit managing in terms of project and also people. And I think that's actually a super difficult skill that it's not easy to learn from your study. And I really enjoy it. I'm learning still, and I'm like tuning myself all the time, asking advice from people who are more senior or having more experience. So if I have chance, I would probably also go for more like managing positions in my future. Maybe perhaps jumping into other energy industry, like using different technology. Now I understand hydropower a bit more than the other technology, but maybe it's also nice to learn a bit about wind power, or maybe even jump back to nuclear production again, which is now also a popular topic again.
What kind of managing do you do now?
It's more like managing projects. I need to do project management, and also I need to, for instance, dedicate work to my colleagues. So one thing is understand their strengths and understand what they want to learn. And I found it's a bit difficult to find a balance, like, oh, should I assign this project for him because he's good at it? Or should I assign this one to the others because they want to learn for it? And it also depends on the timeline of the project, like how fast you want to finish it, but you also want to let your people grow. So it's a bit different. But I think transparent communication helps a lot. Like, so I talk to them often, like, oh, how do you feel about your role now? How do you feel your task now? Do you need some help? Do you think you want to focus on this more? Can we make it on time? Stuff like that.
Let's end with some rapid fire questions. Okay. So you don't have to answer quickly, but it's encouraged.
All right.
But you can also think if you need to.
Yeah.
So what was the best and the worst class or project that you had in university?
The worst or the best? A project or a subject?
Yeah.
Oh, subject also works. Yeah, okay. There's one that I did really terribly. I think it's called diffusion and phase changes for material science. And I only get C- because the teacher is super difficult. Like, the subject is difficult, the teacher is difficult as well. And I think we have 120 students there, and only maybe half of us passed. And I got C-, which I'm really grateful that I don't need to do it again. We don't have re-exam in Taiwan. It's only one chance. So if you fail, then you need to redo it, the whole courses. But then since I feel really bad about, like, I only got C-, so I took a kind of like part-time job to do the video recording for the courses to make it into online courses. So I was there holding the camera and recording the course again, and think about that maybe I can learn again from the courses, but turns out not, because it was always super early in the morning at 8 a.m. The course started at 8 a.m. So I sometimes just fall asleep when I was recording it. So I did not actually learn it again. Oh, yeah, so it's still one of the subjects that I hate.
Yeah, there's these subjects that...
Yeah.
What is your favorite book?
Until now, it's still, like, I think Invisible Women. It's about...
Yeah.
That one's really good. I love it so much.
Yeah.
Talking about gender, like data gender bias. Yeah.
What is your favorite time of the day?
I think it's in the morning, after a shower, when I have breakfast.
Okay, it's very specific.
Yeah. Yes.
What is your favorite blog or podcast?
My favorite one, I think it's called Dear Sugar. It's talking about other people's problem in their relationship, like a relationship in terms of like friendship, or like relationship at their job, or their romantic relationship with family. So they receive letters from the listener, and there's two hosts that they are both authors, and they talk about how to solve this problem. They also invite guests over. Sometimes they are psychiatrists and stuff like that, other author or journalists as well. And I think that's really inspiring. But also I recently really like it's from BBC podcast. It's called Happy Pot. So they talk about happy news happening around the world, and that's also really nice. Yeah, not only the like wars or crime stuff like that. They talk about happy news. Yeah,
like that.
Yeah.
And now my favorite question to ask: if you had to completely abandon your current job and career and do something entirely different, what would you do?
I think I would probably be a barista because I love coffee, or I'm gonna open a bookstore. Yes.
Or both.
Yeah, or both at the same time. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, so it's been amazing to have you. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Of course.
For anyone who wants to learn more about you or talk to you after this, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I also have an Instagram account that I post the music that I like or the cafe that I like and some picture that I took. So you can also follow me on that Instagram account.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we'll link all of that.
Okay, thank you.
And yeah, so thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much for listening. We did it.
Yay.
That was amazing, wasn't it? My favorite thing I learned in this episode today was finding out that energy trading exists in the first place and that it's a highly technical job that's very different from the other types of trading I know, like stock trading. I would have never guessed. So thank you again, Yu-Hsuan Li, for coming onto the show and sharing your story. You can find the show notes for this episode on freshengineer.io/podcast/3, including links to everything we talked about today. Next week, I will talk to a traffic engineer about what it's like to work for the government, how traffic is monitored to prevent congestion, and how to become an engineering manager. Subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcast so you don't miss it. And here's already a little sneak peek.
And at first, I wasn't even an engineering major. I entered college as a music major because I was very serious about music at the time. I think a lot of our decisions end up being influenced by the times we live in. I was in college around when the Great Recession was occurring. And it was pretty apparent to me that as much as I loved music and I knew I wasn't going to be the next Mozart, it probably would have been smart to change majors and actually study something that I'll be able to live comfortably and reach other goals in my life. So I did make the hard decision at the time to change my major.
Thanks for tuning into the Fresh Engineer podcast, where fresh engineers share their stories.